Hello and welcome to Todd Rolls Dice, where we have a Warcry video. What is this? Apparently Warcry is still somehow alive. It's not returned because it has never really gone away officially, and I believe it was mentioned when the Hellsmiths of Hashut were announced. They said that, Warcry, it's still a thing that we throw around in the office. So this isn't really a surprise, but this is really good news for fans of Warcry, and hopefully this is going to be well received and we're going to see a little bit of a resurgence. Maybe it's going to get some actual new content instead of just rules, but from what I can tell with it's a free update, it's available on Warcom, it's in the download section under Warcry. But we're going to run through this article. I have no idea how to play Warcry, so this is all going to be new to me. You guys in the comments will keep me right, I'm sure, but how about we just take a look at this? A massive Warcry update paves the way for the Hellsmiths of Hashut. Warcry is a game of frenetic skirmishes across the mortal realms, in which small warbands battle for treasure, glory, approval of their masters, and sometimes just the sheer thrill of smashing heads. With a new faction on the horizon for Warhammer Age of Sigmar, the Warhammer Design Studio has prepared a massive update. Greetings Warcry fans. Big things are afoot in Warcry. The Hellsmiths of Hashut will be receiving incredible new rules. They're going to be Votann level broken, alongside a massive balance update for the game. This update includes a wide variety of changes, from simple points updates to ability changes, and of course a metric ton of new units to add to your warbands. Which is all exciting, and I believe one of the last things that they said about Warcry, when it was still generally getting updates, was that they wanted all of the Age of Sigmar units that are available to people to have rules in Warcry. That never really happened. In fact, this is the first Warcry article for 11 months. That shows you how forgotten Warcry has been. But this is good news, and obviously there's still some element of Games Workshop that's committed to it. And even if it is just free rules for new units that are available for Sigmar, that's still new units for you to use on the tabletop, and that's a good thing. It might be slim pickings, but let's take what we can get and we'll see what happens from this. There's a little something for almost everyone, and there is more to come later this year. Here is a short breakdown of this update. Points updates. Most of you have stopped reading by now to download the file and inhale the content, which is okay. We understand. For those of you still with us, we've given a bunch of points breaks to underperforming warbands and units. Claws of Karanak get a bunch of drops, as do the Rotbringers, the Teretic Cohort, and the Gloomspike kits. Most of these fighters are doing fine in the game, but you might find yourself running out of steam a little too early, so having an extra fighter or two around will really help you stick it out. Rules update. Counter. The biggest universal change in this update is an errata to counter. This is proving to be a go-to reaction that has a lopsided effect in a lot of matchups. A low value model can return far more damage to an enemy attacking them than they will ever do by swinging their own sword. So we've taken steps to address this with a lower cap on the damage. Now models with a ton of low value attacks are in far lesser peril of nuking themselves with an unlucky roll than they were before. 6 attack fighters rejoice. I don't know how counter worked before. They're obviously looking at balance and how teams are interacting within the current rule set and changing things, so that's good. You'll have to let me know what you think of these new changes. Claws of Karanak. In addition to some solid points drops, these bloodthirsty hunters get a boost by removing the Agile rune mark from their Pack Hunter's ability. It's now easier to chain activate your fighters to get a bit more damage in before someone hits you back. Something's just popped into my head. If I remember, we'll come back to that. The Teretic Cohort. The Teretic Cohort has been doing really well in Age of Sigmar, but have struggled to make their mark in the eyes of their matriarch, pun fully intended, on the fields of battle in Warcry. To help out, they've had some points drops and can now use their Eyes of Catacross ability more than once per battle round. Soon, you'll have wild dice for days. The Twist World. The Twist World had a great time burning out infections across the mortal realms, but one of their signature moves, Eruption of Thorns, hasn't been pulling its weight, so we've boosted the damage output. Players can now enjoy hurling their elves into combat and watching their opponents weep as they deal reliable, flat damage in a smaller circle. And that's not all. There's a bunch of other balance changes and tweaks in this update, too many to list here, but there is plenty to discover. New units, yes, that's right, it's time. Arguably the biggest and most important part of this update are the new units we're adding to the game. Now players can enjoy battling with and against the following additions, to name but a few. Blades of the Hollow King completely makes sense for Warcry. Kado, Sisendra and Aurelius provide an elite, hard-hitting, flexible set of heroes for your Death and Soulblight Gravelords warbands. I need to buy these models. I really need to pick them up. They're stunning. High Falconer Felgrin, he's very new. You can now hurl the High Falconer's mangy, barely feathered gripe at an enemy and watch it rake their eyes out. Lord Vitriolic is coming as well. The Obsessive Alchemist joins his fellow Geists, juggling potions and adding some more ranged punch to Nighthaunt warbands. This is barely scratching the surface, as the Knaves of the Crone, you remember them? Order of Azir, Adeneth Deepkin, Gloomspite Gitz, Maggotkin of Nurgle, Stormcast Eternals, and even more. Besides, join the roster of options for Warcry players. Oi, you missed a bunch. Keen-eyed players will notice that the Null Chemist, Von Grimm Harpoon Crew and Von Grimm Salvagers have not made it into this update. Don't worry, their time will come. You can also expect the new warbands from Warhammer Underworld's Spitewood to make their debut on the table in the future. As well as the Spitewood warband, more awaits from the Hellsmiths of Hashut on an industry-choked horizon. So you can download the rules now, and a full range of boxed Warcry warbands is linked in the article as well. So Warcry warbands, this actually takes me to the point that jumped into my head. A lot of these Warcry warbands have been reboxed and added into, obviously they're in Age of Sigmar, but they've been added into Spearhead boxes, which makes sense, I've got no problem with that. But because of that, the Warcry branded boxes kind of disappeared. So have we had a resurgence? Yeah, this is the thing, they're all available online only. And I don't know, unless they already had stock that they couldn't shift. Don't know if you can get these third party. You can still get the terrain though. Maybe they've had just a massive restock. Some stuff is out of stock. It's only 29, and that includes terrain and individual monsters. I'm just skimming through what we've got here. I mean, price-wise, they're about Kill Team box level, aren't they? Most of the newer stuff that has been released individually is still in stock. I still think there's a load of teams missing. Certainly some of the older ones. I was never really that into Warcry. I never played it. Never had a Warcry warband. I have Age of Sigmar units that I can use in Warcry. Yeah, I mean, there is still some stuff. I wonder how up to date that rulebook is and that starter set is. But what do we think, Warcry fans? This is obviously good for you guys, meaning that you can play with more units, you can bring in more interesting heroes, and a whole host of changes and balance updates and points changes, and this is obviously good for the state of the game. And they've said Helms of Hashut are coming in, there's going to be other units, a lot of the Sigmar stuff that is released recently, if it hasn't got rules now, is going to be getting rules, but there's nothing about a new box. But maybe because they're trying to keep it alive, they're going to bring in these new units that are Sigmar units that you can use in this, which is a great strategy, by the way. I'm all for being able to share units and getting extra data sheets and rules for models you already own for a different game system to play in another one. That should be across the board. Kill Team fails in that regard, because I think that you should just have generic profiles for every model in 40k. They'd never do it because it's too much work, but for Warcry it does help keep the game alive, and it means that if you've never really looked at Warcry, or the bespoke warbands aren't really your thing, and to be honest there isn't one that I would go for outside of the Cities of Sigmar, the Wildercorps, there isn't one that's caught my eye. But I can use my Dark Oath, I can use Gunnerbrand, and maybe down the line I'd look at picking up Kado and some Soulblight Gravelords or something, and then I'd have a little force of Kado with some Skelly boys. So all of this just makes it more appealing to me to want to get involved. I think they've left it too late to really grab newer players at this point in time, although this is great for newer players. But I do want to know, existing Warcry players, how are you generally finding the game? The lack of anything up to this point has been quite telling from Games Workshop, but this is a big declaration of intent, so are you excited by this? And generally, how are these updates faring? Do they come across quite well, or has it made changes that didn't really need to happen? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.